For April 16th, 2019. Welcome to everybody today. I had a quick note from Councillor Roy DiClemente, who said she may be a little bit late, so we can greet her when she does come. I know she's on her way, but she's running just a little bit behind. With that, I'd like to call our meeting to order and ask for any declarations of interest. Seeing none, community announcements. Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to note that we had a very successful pancake breakfast at the North Union Hall on the weekend. Thank you for all the members of council who made it out. I think we served about 227 people. So I think it was a good number, good record. And if you left hungry, it was your own fault. As well, we had celebrated the Lions' 50th anniversary in Mount Albert. So that was a great event too. Had a lot of dignitaries out to see that and support it. Very good. On a sad note, we said goodbye to local Mount Albert resident Grace Riseborough, who passed away unfortunately. If you knew Grace, you didn't have to worry about what she was thinking because she was saying it. A force of nature. And as well, another passing, Queensville native Dave Pinfold passed away just the other day. Particular connection to myself. He is a legend in the insurance community and played a big role in my career, and he passed away way too soon. So that's it for me, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you. It's been a week of celebrating. We had our volunteer appreciation, which was well attended, and a lot of people that we thanked for their work, and it was great to see so many familiar faces. We also had our open house, which was here at the town offices, and again, really well attended. I forget what the final number was, but so many great stations put on by our staff to learn about different aspects of the town. So thank you to staff for hosting that, and I think it's something we should do more often. Thank you.
Councillor Persechini.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I also attended the open house. It was really great. I'm thinking that maybe we should look at maybe in doing one in the summertime instead of that date. Maybe we'll get more people out. Just a thought. It was very well attended. I was so proud of our staff. They did a good job and walked around and say hi to all of them, and they were all happy to be there. So, and the people were enjoying the food, and so it was fun. It was a fun day. I also attended volunteer appreciation, which was another fun night. It was great to see all the volunteers get recognized, and also the North Union pancake breakfast. It was great. I bought a couple of pies for Easter, and I made a donation. I didn't eat the pancakes because I had my breakfast, but it was a great event. There was a lot of people there, and I'm so glad I passed the torch to a good guy, and that he'll carry on my duties and responsibility, and they seemed to be happy. I was checking up on him anyway, so anyway, it was great. Thank you.
Councillor Morton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Now, Councillor Persechini, when you're going out for breakfast, you're not supposed to eat breakfast before you go. I also attended the pancake breakfast, which was very, very well attended, and they do a wonderful job up there. And you're pouring the coffee down just right there, Councillor Crone. And the 50th anniversary, I was with the Mayor and Councillor Crone, and it was an amazing afternoon. And I really appreciated the invitation because my dad was a charter member of the Lions Club, so it brought along a lot of memories as well. And I had the opportunity to represent East Gwillimbury at the Portraits of Giving, and it was amazing. One of our own residents, and actually two of our own residents, because Kurt Kelly from Mount Albert also received the award, and it was a wonderful evening. And former deputy Tom Carrick also spoke and said what a wonderful job it was and how nice it was to be honored, and that he was busy getting busy and with his new position. So all in all, it was a busy weekend, but a great one too. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. To go along with everything that everyone else has said and the events that we attended, I just wanted to mention, and I may be stealing your thunder, Madam Mayor, I'm not sure. On April the 4th, I attended here in the council chambers a Friends of the Library event. And they had the author, John Little, here speaking about his book, Who Killed Tom Thompson, a pretty prolific Canadian artist. It was a great event. They had, I believe, somewhere around 105 people in the audience. To hear a guy talk for an hour and a half without looking at a note about the book that he had written was really good. The passion really showed, and I've since read the book. It turns up lots of questions. I have a copy of it at home if anybody wants to have a look at it. Back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. It has been a very busy time. I have a number of items that have not been mentioned. I participated in a video to promote net zero homes from Acorn last week, and they are going to be using this video to promote this East Gwillimbury home at all of their development sites. So very exciting. Stay tuned, and I have asked that we be asked to have a tour of the home. It really is quite something. I too attended the Holland Landing Lions breakfast and the Friends of the Library. You don't steal the thunder. What you do is we share in the celebration. So it was really quite the evening. I likened the author to a storyteller. No notes. He just talked about his life and how it intertwined with Tommy Thompson's life many years ago, and his family, in fact, were connected as well. It was a wonderful evening, and I will give the chief a little heads up that they were full here, and they're putting their sights up above here and wondering if they may be able to put in a few more chairs for some of the very popular author readings. I represented the town to say farewell to our police deputy, Chief Tom Carrick, and he has now assumed his new position as commissioner for the OPP, and I know everybody was sad to see him go, but very proud that it was somebody from York Regional Police that they selected, and we all know Tom well enough to know that he is going to do a terrific job for the OPP. I attended a formal announcement with Minister Carolyn Mulrooney regarding the funding of the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. East Gwillimbury will receive a one-time payment of $725,000 in the 2018-2019 fiscal year. These funds are to support small and rural municipalities' efforts to become more efficient and reduce expenditure growth in the long term, and staff, I know, will be collaborating to identify projects where this funding can be used, and a report will be brought back to council. It's always nice to have funds like that have very little strings attached, so I'm looking forward to staff bringing back a report on that. I had the pleasure of attending 2 100 birthdays. A couple who, one was born in February and one was born 6 weeks later, and the Bill and Violet Curtin, amazingly 100 years old, and are quite spry and had a lot of stories to tell along the way, so it was a wonderful Sunday afternoon. I too was at the volunteer appreciation, as I think all of members of council were. We had a community open house signing of the Inclusion and Diversity Charter, which is very exciting for us, and I know as we move forward we're all going to be working hard on our diversity community committee to make sure that we reach out to a lot of our new residents and some that have been here a long time. I attended the annual Magna Give Back Awards, an award presented to high school students in recognition of their volunteer efforts. The 2 recipients from East Gwillimbury both had done over 1,000 hours in volunteering in their high school time. And the 2 recipients were Madison Coker from Sharon, and she attends Sacred Heart, and Sue Glitterman of Queensville, and she attends Newmarket High. They're both involved in making a huge difference through volunteering, and I should say that Magna hosts this, tracks it, they take applications, and they give them a check at the end as they're heading off to a post-secondary. North Union Pancake Breakfast, thank you to all those that worked so hard with that. Thanks to the coffee and tea pourer. You did a fine job. They've whipped you into shape. I also attended on Sunday Keith Smith's 90th birthday celebration, and that was at the Rock in Georgina because he has moved out of East Gwillimbury, but it reminded me that he was 80 years in East Gwillimbury in a very short time in somewhere else. So we presented a plaque on his behalf. And the farmers market, I was at their meeting last night, and just so people are aware, they're still looking for vendors. They're also looking for a few more volunteers who want to come out and help meet and greet on Thursday evenings, Thursday from 2 to 7, and I know that they're still looking for people with that. And last but not least was the Mount Albertan District Lions 50th charter anniversary with Lions International. Councillor Crone and Councillor Morton indicated that they were also in attendance, and I have a check that I'm going to turn over to our treasurer, our corporate director, and this is a check for $25,000. Funds they raised to support the Mount Albert Skate Park. I have a check here, and I will, well, maybe I'll give it to Mr. Carmison. Are you going to spend it, aren't you? You're the one that's okay. I'll give it to you then, as opposed to. So I will give that to you, and I would suggest that a letter from council formally acknowledging this substantial support. It's one of 3 checks that they're expecting to hand to us. So with that, I will leave that for you, Mr. Carmison. Okay. Perfect timing. And it's your turn now.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm assuming you're doing a community announcements.
We are.
I am looking at our neighborhood network tree planting that's happening on Saturday the 27th. It's on Rogers Reservoir, just off Holland River Boulevard, and that happens in the morning of the 27th. There's also our EG Women's Show happening that same Saturday, and that's all in support of the Cancer Center. Huge undertaking by one of our local businesses. And they basically take over the Holland Landing Community Center, so that's a big thing. I'm also pleased to advise committee that our Team EG for the Run for South Lake has now attracted 19 members. So I think it's one of our largest teams that we've ever fielded. And there are awesome residents, staff members, family members, members of council all participating. At the moment, we have raised $4,000. We are leading the municipal challenge, but we can't take our foot off the gas. Those 19 members of our team have to start doing a little bit of fundraising themselves, and I'm sure that our numbers will increase. So just a bit of a plea to folks to, if you can't join us, to please consider even just a $20 donation to a team member or to the team as a whole would be greatly appreciated. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. That completes our community announcements. We'll move to item D on the agenda, and that is presentations. And Mr. Clerk, would you introduce, although he doesn't need any introduction, introduce our presenter, please?
Through you, Madam Mayor, thank you very much. Correct, Mr. Walters is the Chief Administrative Officer from the Lake Simcoe Region Conservation Authority, making a presentation to committee regarding the annual operating priorities for 2019.
Welcome. Good to have you with us today.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, members of council, staff, and members of the audience. It's my great pleasure to be here. Don't get out enough, so I'm very happy to finally be in front of the new council. I provided some information in the folders in front of you. This is our strategic plan. It was created in 2016, runs till the end of next year, and I'm happy to say we're well on course to complete it ahead of schedule. So 4 goals. 9 outcomes and 42 activities, and we're currently trending at 34. And I'm going to be presenting the other activities that will complete the plan at today's presentation. Also is our annual report, which essentially tells you what we did in 2018. So, and I've also included a copy just because we don't come to this council with our budget. We're a regional. The region is our primary funder, but I thought it important that you see our budget. So this provides transparency on what we're spending our money on. And again, it's very relevant to today's presentation. So with that, I'll jump right in. So our priorities, annual operating priorities are something we've been doing. They resulted from the strategic plan. Essentially what we do is every year we look at the strategic plan and we pick those priorities that we have to accomplish. And we've had the 5 years to do all 42. Essentially, they're not everything that we do. We have other business, but sometimes opportunistic projects come up, and we take advantage of those opportunities. So you're going to see some that annual operating priorities, which aren't actually in the plan, but are opportunistic based on current. It could be funding programs. It could be a specific need of a member municipality. So. They can span several years. So we have a couple here that you'll see that are a couple of years in the making. For example, our new nature center. We're fundraising for it now, construction. We're hoping to have things in the ground going forward sometime in 2023. So AOP activities for 2019. These are the ones that we have listed, and I'm going to go through them in a bit of detail, so I won't go through them too much now. And we have the 11. So first is emergency mapping flood relief. We are the primary agency with respect to flood warning. We've taken it a step further. Flood warning's all fine and well, but we would like to see floodplains actually reduced across the watershed to take people out of harm's way. So we have an emergency management system, which is a very comprehensive system which we can warn people during different flood events. The idea now, though, is to actually look at can we undertake capital works to reduce floodplain and take people out of harm's way. So we're undertaking a study with, we've commissioned a LiDAR across the entire watershed. We're going to be updating all the floodplain mapping, and we're going to be looking at those opportunities. And we've identified a few already. One with Metrolinx in the town of Aurora, another one in the town of Uxbridge, which is proceeding, and that's reducing the floodplain in the downtown core. It's going to take 167 homes out of the floodplain, as well as allow for redevelopment within the downtown core. So there's a lot of benefit associated with some of the work. The capital strategy will actually be a strategy that will identify specific projects, costs, and timelines. And we're still trying to figure out where we're going to get the money to pay for the flood relief. Certainly right now we're taking advantage of the federal program, the National Disaster Mitigation Program. We just received $453,000 this year to undertake work in Alcona. So that's exciting. So this is a fourth quarter deliverable by the year 2020. So it will take to the end of 2020 to complete. Enhancing sediment and erosion control activities. We currently work to undertake sediment and erosion control plans with plans of subdivision. And we work with our member municipalities to ensure that fences are going down, or if there's problems, that we're on top of it. We're going to propose this year sort of a cost-saving program for our municipal partners, whereby potentially we could hire a couple inspectors by pooling money with all the authorities and different municipalities, and have those people do that job just full-time. We've seen a lot of impacts associated with problems where we've had failures of ponds or silt fence. And as such, there's huge environmental degradation that can occur, and lawsuits. So we were impacted ourselves on one of our properties. It was a price tag of over $1 million for the builder, and if we had caught it sooner, it would have saved everybody a lot of time and effort. So we've also been working with the Canadian Standards Development Group on new standards for erosion control, and they were released, and we're now working on the same for low-impact development. So again, this is a first quarter deliverable in the first of 2020. Smarter Sustainable Building Practices. This is a continuation of a program we started. It was initially called Rainscaping, where we work with the build industry, and we looked at low-impact development and how we could further better stormwater management practices. We've had a number of great successes. It is now, as of 2016, the stormwater guidelines are in regulation. And the Lake Simcoe phosphorus offsetting program is up and running as of January of last year. So this is to continue to work with the build industry partners, undertake training, and continue to push the bounds of research and innovation with respect to how we can be more sustainable with building practices. And it's focusing primarily on water management. We're not getting into the energy sector simply because there's a lot of people already there and we don't want to duplicate services. So this is a second quarter deliverable in 2020. Key environmental trends is something that we do annually, but this year is special in that we're going to be undertaking another, what we call it is a toxicology study across the watershed. We look at special contaminants. We only do this once every 5 years because of the significant cost. So we look at things like pharmaceuticals, we look at other more exotic chemicals which don't get picked up in our routine sampling. And this is to identify hotspots and to see if there's anything new or emerging across the watershed. All of our information is available on our open data portal, so people can go onto the website and they can see where these areas are going to be. And one example of a key environmental trend, the graph at the top shows salt concentrations in Lake Simcoe. And it is very disturbing, and salt is, I hate to say this, salt is the new phosphorus. We're working very diligently to try to reduce salt. And there's a freshwater roundtable that we've formed with a number of other very large agencies, including Environment Canada, and we're trying to get to some type of salt control. If we do nothing within 56 years, Lake Simcoe will be at the chronic level for salt contamination. So it is a significant issue. So this key performance indicators, it will be completed first quarter in 2020. Climate change mitigation adaptation strategy. I'm happy to say the first part of the mitigation program is well underway. We're working with a number of universities where we're actually looking at carbon footprint across the entire watershed with the hope that we can start working with some of our partners on climate mitigation. We have our own carbon reduction strategy in the office, and with the goal of reducing it by 30% by the year 2030. And again, well on our way to that. The adaptation plan will be released later, first of next year. And it's the one that's the most important. We're seeing the impacts of climate change now, and they're very damaging. We're seeing increased phosphorus loads because of seasonality changes and flow changes. We're seeing flooding events. We're seeing issues where if we're not getting too much water, we're not getting enough, and drought conditions. So having resilience built within the watershed is really important, and that's one of the responses to this, obviously, is the low impact development program, which helps control flows and put water back in the ground where it belongs. Undertaking an operational review. This is very timely given what the province is doing. If you have not seen, there are 2 postings currently on the environmental registry. One is to modernize conservation authorities. The other is to look at our regulation and are we doing things right? Are we doing the right things? So we had this in the strategic plan as a 4-year goal. So it is now year 4, and we're going to be looking at all our programs and services to see whether we're providing good value, good return on investment, and whether those programs are relevant. And this will be a sort of a framework moving forward for the next strategic plan. So we'll be coming out with the results to our member municipalities to fact check to see if we are in the right direction. And again, this is another first quarter deliverable in 2020. Asset management. Now, everybody that knows about assets know you do have to manage them. We have not got an asset management plan. We are now working with the region of York, and we just got some money from FCM, actually, to complete our asset management plan. We have a number of assets which are aging. We have a lot of facilities. Our research vessel has seen better days, so through the foundation we are actually able to replace that vehicle at 100% cost to the foundation. So this was just a function of a dead battery and a really bad storm one day, and our boat sunk. So we're working very diligently on trying to identify all of the assets, what the standard should be for maintenance, and making sure that they are maintained into the future. So. Talent management is our asset management for people. So I have a great team at the Conservation Authority. We have over 100 staff now. The complement has grown. We have 4 full-time equivalents in the budget for this year. It was all mostly paid for without tax dollar. There was one position, which was the one that would look after the environmental emergency response floodplain relief program. So we've been doing a talent management successional plan and development regime. We've instituted new performance management measures and accountability across the office, and I couldn't be more pleased with the team we have. So we are going to finish the talent management plan. With that will be the successional plan, and that'll be first quarter deliverable in 2020. So. Improving service delivery, again, another provincial requirement that we just happened to have in the plan, so it was timely. We've already been working in collaboration with the build industry, ResCon, which stands for Residential Construction. Build is the Building Industry Land Development Association, and the Ontario Home Builders Association. We work with them already. We have quite a partnership. When we look at our fees for permits or for building, we actually consult with them, and we don't raise them without a letter of sign-off from the industry. So we are now looking at streamlining our planning and permitting approvals. We're actually working with ResCon on an e-permitting platform, which we're really excited about, and we're targeting specific timelines for both plans of subdivision and permits that would be fixed, and that is another first quarter deliverable in 2020. This is exciting because it finally got going. It's taken a number of years, but our Scanlon Creek Operations Center is getting a facelift. The contractors are moving in the first of next week. So this is much needed. Because we have grown, we had limited office space. We do house Conservation Ontario downstairs. We didn't want to kick them out. And it wouldn't have mattered if we couldn't, the space they had was not sufficient for the staff that we have now to complement. So this was an existing structure that was used for our overnight education program, and when that was discontinued by the Board of Ed, the building was sitting empty. So it became a perfect opportunity for us to recycle and reuse an existing structure, and it is just being, as I said, renovated so that it can house staff. The basement will be available for future growth should it ever occur. In the interim, we're going to be taking all our file system that we have now through Iron Mountain, bringing that back into the building, and there'll be some savings associated with that. So we're hoping this will be a fourth quarter deliverable before the end of this year. The contractor has said they can get the work done, so we are hopeful that that will be the case. And finally, fundraising, construction of our new education center. Our existing education center is pictured in the above. It's 3 portables that were 20 years old 20 years ago when we got them. They're held together by a central entrance that was built by staff, and it's in dire need of replacement. So this is the asset management issue I mentioned. Our staff have been fantastic at keeping this facility standing and operational. With that said, it has come to the end of its life cycle. So through the foundation, once again, we're fundraising for a new nature center. It'll be a multi-use facility that could be used for more than just educational programs. Could be used for our annual general meeting. It could be used for training, professional development. And we've done a business case with a lot of our municipal partners in the Bradford area and feasibility analysis to make sure that should we build it, they will come. So we're very happy. We're looking at having this project shovel ready. And that's a schematic of what it could potentially look like. The final design stage, we are just shopping around for a consultant now to do the final design. This was a conceptual plan, and we need to get the construction drawings in the works so that we can get our site plan approved for start of 2021. So this is a fourth quarter deliverable as well. So that's a very quick overview of the activities, the major activities we're working on now. These are the annual operating priorities as based on the strategic plan. We have departmental priorities and, of course, business as usual. Generally, when an activity gets completed within the strategic plan, it becomes operational. So, for example, the natural heritage restoration strategy we completed last year is now being put into operation. So we're actually going out looking at acquiring lands for the purposes of restoration and targeting restoration works on significant areas that were identified within the strategy. So that's just one example. So with that, I'd be more than happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walters. Questions from members of committee?
Just curious, when was Conservation Authority established? What year?
So through you, Madam Chair, our Conservation Authority was established in 1951. So.
Before, I'm not seeing any other questions. You're talking about salt in the lake. And I hear that quite often out in the community now. You either put too much down or you don't put enough. And what is it that we can do both as individuals but also as a corporation to do our part in tackling this? It sounds like it's a huge issue and continues to get bigger.
Through Madam Chair, we started with educational programs, and changing behavior is very hard. And we found out it wasn't really the municipalities or the general public that were putting down too much. It really was the private sector who are servicing some of the big box stores and some of the other commercial industrial areas. And the issue is slip, trips, and falls, to be blunt. Liability is a big issue. So if somebody does fall, chances are you're going to be sued. So those commercial enterprises are contracting and they're putting on way too much, simply because then they can make the argument that we did our due diligence. The parking lot was clear. Meanwhile, you've got tons and tons of salt entering into our waterways. So last year we launched what we called the Freshwater Roundtable. We got members of the industry, the federal, provincial government. We even have the U.S. consulate, and I'm still trying to figure out why they're there, but they're there. World Wildlife Federation, McDonald's, Brookfield Development Corp. So we have a number of individuals, including insurance industry, at the table. And what we're trying to do is we're going to come up with what we hope is a white paper that demonstrates best management practices for salt application. And they do vary depending upon conditions. So it isn't as simple as just saying you can only put down this much. Once that's completed, we're hoping that'll get put into regulation. And then we're going to be calling on the province to create legislation to indemnify private industry. And we've already had this discussion with the province. They seem to be very interested. We have a number of provincial staff on the working group, and it seems to be going well. So we have a draft of the white paper, and it'll be coming out for broad distribution sometime this fall. So look for it in October. And then hopes are that we can institute some change with respect to the legislation sometime early next year.
Thank you. Questions? Councillor Carruthers and then Councillor Crone.
Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. It's wonderful work that you do. A quick question. I always wondered why Aurelia wasn't didn't have a seat on the board.
So through you, Madam Chair, municipalities can join an authority. It's not something that we go out. It's been at the will of the municipality. So we have gone to Aurelia a number of times trying to get them to join the authority. Unfortunately, I have a feeling it's probably the regulation. I really can't. I don't think it's the money. The cost is relatively low compared to their overall budget, but I think it's the fact that you would have new regulation applied within the city.
Okay.
So I can't really speculate on what their exact rationale is, but we have tried and we'll be trying again. Our new chairman, Chair Wayne Emerson, has already been making arrangements to go up, and we're going to be presenting to them once again to see whether we can get them into the fold. So.
Excellent. And what about First Nations on Georgina Island? They'd be the most affected. Do they have a voice at the Conservation Authority?
Through Madam Chair, currently they're not a member of the authority. We certainly do consult with them, and that's we spent 4 days last year going through truth and reconciliation training with Chippewas of Georgina. So we value that partnership extremely much. So we've suggested they could come on as an ad hoc member right now.
Right.
Unfortunately, that doesn't give them a vote at the table.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe some of the future changes with respect to the current legislation on modernizing conservation authorities will address that. But,
Yeah, I think that they should definitely have a seat at the table, at least a voice at the table, if not a vote. And one more question. I don't see anything in here about phosphorus, and it seems to be a huge concern, but I'm not seeing anything in here.
So through you, Madam Chair, phosphorus is an operational issue that we live with and have been living with since 1982. So we have programs in place. There, if you go onto our website, you'll see there's funding programs, financial assistance available for people to undertake works on their own property to reduce phosphorus, as well the phosphorus offset program. This is the first of its kind program anywhere. It's an offset that the build industry actually is required to pay to offset whatever additional phosphorus they can't control on site. And we developed this in partnership with the build industry and the OHBA and the ResCon folks. So I can't be more proud of our build industry. They're actually working to reduce phosphorus. So every time a new plan of subdivision is built, whatever phosphorus they can't control through stormwater practice, they offset monetarily. That money goes into a pool of money at the Conservation Authority and is then used to fund green infrastructure projects to remove phosphorus with our municipal partners.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you to Mr. Walters. We've known each other for almost 30 years, and it's always a pleasure to hear you talk. We've had chats before, and beyond salt and phosphorus in the lake, you've mentioned that climate change is a huge threat to the lake. Knowing that climate change just isn't the responsibility of the federal government or the provincial government, but if we're going to use that old environmental mantra, think globally but act locally. What can we do locally to help you combat climate change? We've just introduced a discussion paper on idling, vehicle idling, to offset carbon monoxide and dioxide. But what would you recommend for us to do that we could do more to combat climate change? Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor. We undertook a carbon reduction plan for our own agency, and we would suggest that if municipalities, if you haven't done that, you take a look at it. And essentially what we did was we mapped out our carbon footprint, and then we looked at our behaviors and said, how can we change certain behaviors to reduce our carbon? So for example, the easiest one was our fleet. Our vehicles were probably the biggest source of carbon within the office. So we've moved to electric vehicles or hybrids. We don't purchase regular gas vehicles anymore. We've still got some, but as part of the asset management plan moving forward, as those vehicles come up for replacement, they're going to be replaced with green vehicles. We put solar panels on our roof. We looked at alternative sources of energy, but we've also looked at, again, just behavioral practices, people leaving lights on, turn the lights off, save the power, reduce your footprint, essentially. So there is a organization, we're a member of it, it's ClimateWise, and it's all about climate change. And they will, if you join, they will provide you with the tools. We have them as well, and should a municipality wish, I think we'd be more than happy to provide that service to come in, map your footprint, and work with your staff to look at how we can reduce carbon footprint locally. With that said, same things can be done around the house. So there is a primer that's coming out on how to reduce your carbon footprint. There's already lots of information up on the web, but you're going to see more of this coming from the organization. Our biggest focus won't be so much on mitigation as it will be on adaptation, which is building resilience to change, because climate change is here already. And as you saw from some of those photos, ice damage along the shoreline. We've had extreme weather events that cause flash flooding. So we're looking at how we can build resilience into the system to reduce some of those very damaging aspects of climate change.
Councillor Roy DiClemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Mr. Walters, thank you very much for coming here. I always learn something when I hear you speak and when I engage with material from the Conservation Authority. I know that within the past several years we have updated our erosion and sedimentation control standards, given that there had been some challenges. I'm wondering, and maybe this is more of a technical question, but I'm wondering if we need to review them again, I guess is the best way of putting it, in order to strengthen them further, or part B of the question would be, are you working in concert with our staff to make sure that we have the very strongest controls in place in order to protect the watershed?
Through your worship, we do work with your staff on a regular basis, and your staff is great. We partner with all of the municipalities, but certainly East Gwillimbury is one of our better municipalities to work with. Climate change is the one issue again with this, and it's this issue of seasonality and changes in storm size, and so we're always going to be wary of what we produce. The CSA guideline now for sediment erosion control is out. It is a bit more robust than what we have had in the past, and that was in response to climate change. So we're not requiring it yet, but there will be a push in the future probably to do that. And we have a stormwater working group of which staff attend, and it'll be brought to the attention of those folks, hopefully to take back to the municipalities and take a look at. So I think we always have to be vigilant no matter what. Things are changing, and those changes have not been subtle in any step of the way within our watershed. They're quite pronounced. So.
Go ahead.
If I may just further, I recall very vividly that, we've had some storm events that, we've talked about those stormwater management design standards as being, designing those ponds to withstand a 50-year storm, and yet we've seen 200-year storms in the past 5 years. Or something of the nature, but it certainly struck me as something that was of imminent importance, is to make sure that those stormwater management ponds, of which the development industry is so fond of building, are being built to a standard that are going to be exceeding the storm events that we're seeing on a regular occasion. And I think if there's something that we can do to assist you in that respect, please don't hesitate to let us know. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the 100-year event is now the 1 in 10.5-year event, based on our newest research. So that's unpublished, but we're just getting it peer reviewed now, and that's alarming. So what we used to count on happening every 100 years is now every 10 years, roughly, a little more. In Newmarket, it seems like it's every other Tuesday during the summer. So torrential Tuesdays, we call it. So. That's the emphasis we placed on low impact development. It actually controls the volume of runoff by treating it on the site. And we are the only agency in Ontario that has the criteria that we have, which is you must control 25 millimeters of rainfall on your site. And again, this was developed in concert with the industry, and I can't give them enough credit. They've been a fantastic partner to work with. So they are instituting low impact development. I think you'll see the stormwater pond slowly fade away. They're costly to maintain. They don't do a great job environmentally. And frankly, if we have to, we can use dry ponds that flood on occasion and just for volume control. But low impact seems to be our best approach to dealing with climate change in urban areas moving forward.
Thank you very much for being here. We really appreciate you coming out and giving us the 2019 highlights. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, we are live streamed, about how people get involved with the new education facility and the fundraising portion thereof. I know you're a part of it, but you're not leading it. You have other things to lead. If you could share that with us, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, our foundation has actually taken the lead, so Lisa Spinks or Cheryl Taylor within our office, if you would like to provide a donation. We're presently what they call the quiet phase, and I'm not a fundraiser, so the quiet phase to me is I guess it's the quiet phase. We're not out actively seeking donations from the public yet. Right now they're mostly corporate in nature, but and we've had a good response. But I know that they'll be going out more fulsome fundraising probably towards the fall of this year. So it's very good. And thank you. I know you're connected on the Connect campaign, so thank you.
It's called
for
a
your
Connect
effort.
campaign. Yeah. So if anybody sees that out there, that's what it's all about. And reminder that any donations receive a tax
They do.
certificate. So with that, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And could I have Councillor Roy DiClemente move? All those in favor? And that's carried. Have a great day. Thank you.
You too. My pleasure. Thank you.
We're at item E, and that's deputations. And Mr. Clerk, I do not have any deputations listed here. Is that correct?
That is correct, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We'll move to item F, and that's Community Parks, Recreation, Culture, with Councillor Persechini in the chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I only have one item here. Community Park and Recreation Culture, CPRC 2019-14, community entry signs. You have it in front of you. General Manager Carruthers, do you have any comments on these signs?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I do have a brief presentation to support the report before council.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. I have a short presentation to support the report before Council, CPRC 2009-14, Town Community Entry Signs. This is a project that's in collaboration with CPRC, responsible for streetscape and urban design, communications, who is responsible for our sign standards, and as well as CIES, who installs, repairs, and maintains our roadway signs. Our existing town and community entry signs are now showing some visible signs of deterioration, including faded and deteriorating sign faces, delaminating sign faces, as well as some rusting hardware, as you can see by some of these pictures here. We have 17 town entry signs, which are at our town borders, and as well 14 community entry signs, which are in between our communities, welcoming our residents and visitors between communities. Our updated corporate standard has been implemented at all our facilities as well as our parks as of late. You'll see resilient rust-proof materials, including aluminum sign faces, updated color palettes and graphics, fade-resistant and rust-proof materials, and as well as a green standard at our facility signs with softscaping, seasonal plantings reflecting the town as 70% green, agricultural, and rural. The updated proposed town and community entry signs will have a similar look and feel to our facility and park signs, with updated color palettes, graphics, as well as the resilient materials used with the signs in at our facilities and our parks. Our proposed entry features are at select locations in town with high volume, in particular high volume traffic. Yonge and Green Lane, 404 and Green Lane, and Woodbine and Ravenshoe have all been identified as locations for potential entry feature signs. As you can see here is a sign at Yonge and Green Lane, and of course, signs have been added to this sign over time. You can see a number of different signs that have been scabbed on to the existing welcome or entry feature sign. As well, this sign is beginning to show signs of deterioration, fading, rusting of some of the hardware, and it's just not reflective of the town and our identity. Moving forward, the town is proposing an entry feature that will have an elevated design and construction standard using resilient, natural, and natural look materials, and as well as softscaping that will be consistent with our facility signs, our park signs, with seasonal plantings, again reflecting the town as green, agricultural, and rural, and as well with LED lighting, backlit and illuminated, so the sign can benefit residents and visitors at the evening hours as well. I'd be happy to answer any questions related to the presentation or the report that's before council.
Thank you, Mr. Carruthers. Could I have a move? Oh, okay, go ahead. I have a move it, okay. Councillor Crone, Councillor Crone. Is there any question from the committees? Okay, I'll start with Councillor Crone, and I'll go to Councillor Carruthers, and then Roy DeGrant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Mr. Karmazin, thank you very much for that presentation. I'm so delighted to see that. I think many of the residents take a pride of ownership in our community, and the sign when they have friends come in and visit should reflect that. So I appreciate the exercise in keeping the brand standard and refreshing everything. My question is, there are some signs that were erected by local business groups. I can think of one on Highway 48 in Mount Albert and another one on Mount Albert Road coming in, although not built by the town. Do we have any plans for those signs, or are we working with the local groups, or is that a separate endeavor altogether?
General Manager Carruthers, can you answer that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I do know that the Chamber of Commerce was working with the business community to do some updates to their sign inventory. Again, at our town entry points. I do know that they did a test or a mock-up of one of the signs that was here just off of Leslie, just south of Mount Albert Side Road. And I think that is an active project on their behalf. With the chamber taking the lead with that initiative.
Councillor Carruthers?
Thank you. Can we go back up to the mock-up that said, welcome to Mount Albert? There. I noticed that the welcome is a lowercase w, and I think that's maybe just stylistic, but I'm not sure that really looks correct. It jumped out at me that should be a capital W on the welcome. I'm just wondering if that was something that is negotiable, or if this is already cut in stone.
General Manager?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it's certainly negotiable. We haven't moved forward with a final approval for these signs, and we can review that with corporate communications internally.
Wonderful, thank you. If I may, I noticed that with the new, the big signs, that all the stuff that's, as you said, scabbed on to the older ones is now gone. It's a much cleaner look. It looks fantastic. I did like, though, that it said established 1821, and I was wondering if there was a way to put that onto the larger signs, the big ones, if you can pull that up.
General Manager, go ahead.
He's just going to pull it up. Keep going. What there? I'm wondering if below the green wave, if we could put a established in 1821 there. I think it speaks to our history, and it's a very clean look, and I'm not sure that that would interfere with the cleanness of the look. And then one final comment, looking at the expense of these larger signs, I would like to see a breakdown of how that is divided out. Seems like an awful lot of money. It was approved by the previous council, so I'm not objecting or anything like that. I just would like to better understand the breakdown of that, and you can send me that later. That's fine. And if we are going to be spending over $350,000 on these signs, I think it might be a good time just to do a bit of a community consultation on our logo to make sure that before we spend that kind of money, that it's not time to update our logo. I'm not sure how the community would feel. I've heard from a number of people who want to get a fresh new look as the town grows. So I think prior to putting these up would be a time to be looking at the logo. I like the design, and it's just the logo with the beaver, and I always thought that was a mountain behind it, which doesn't really seem like, e.g. I've lived here 25 years, I've never seen a beaver, a coyote, a deer, a turkey. So I just wonder if we can have some look into that. If there's not an appetite, that's fine, but before investing so much money, let's just make sure that we want to continue with the same logo. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you want to, could I have Can I talk to now Councillor Crone? No, Councillor. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to echo the comments of Councillor Carruthers. I had also flagged the W. My suggestion would be to, in order to keep the style, would be to have all of those letters be small capitals so that it has a uniformity and not having the capital W sticking out. The concern that I had was with respect to our logo and the branding of our municipality. And I think I've repeated this. I think this is now the 9th year that I've raised this, and that's that our crest is of value to us. But when we start to look at the image that we want to portray our community as, I don't think that reflects the vision that we have for the community. And I hesitate to spend several $100,000 on signage with the crest on it. This was something I had raised when we did the facility entry signs at Holland Landing and the arena. At the time, I was assured that the design was such that we could remove that section and put in a new logo. A new logo has not appeared, but I would hesitate to be putting these up with a somewhat traditional look to it when our community is growing and we have an obligation, in my opinion, to reflect that a little bit more wholeheartedly. So that was my comments there, and through you, Mr. Chair, I also wanted to ask staff in finance. I recall, probably 2011, that there was an agreement. I believe it was with Bell Canada. They provided us with a very, very modest sum of money that was to go towards our gateway entry fee at the 404. I'm wondering if we still have that, we still have that on the books, and if we can apply that to the budget here.
Chair Carmison?
Mr. Chairman, I can confirm that that's correct. We do have $15,000 of funding that would be available that we could apply to the project. It's specifically for gateway entrance sign purposes, so be very appropriate.
Madam Mayor?
As I said, it was modest.
You are correct. I'm just wondering if you could clarify for me when you talk about gateway, does that also include something that's going to be on the 404? As we come up the 404, you see the Aurora sign, you see the Newmarket sign, and we've got a nice spot there just waiting for an East Gwillimbury sign. So is this part and parcel of that cost?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct. There is one of the projects in the report is for an entry feature sign at Highway 404 and Green Lane.
On the 404?
That's correct. Heading northbound to capture the traffic heading northbound, be on the northeast corner of the off-ramp.
And then we can have the signs changed along the 404 instead of saying to Newmarket, to East Gwillimbury. I'm hearing some changes that people are looking for, so I am hoping that we will have another look at this with another report to come back to us before anything is finalized, I'm assuming.
Go ahead.
I wasn't going to speak to this, Mr. Chair, but being here for a few years and driving by some of these dilapidated signs, I guess from one of my perspectives of administrator, there is civic pride, and we've done a terrific job of late with our facilities and better signage, better landscaping, and I think there's been a lot of comments from the public that this is a town that takes pride in its front yard. The branding exercise would be worthwhile, but I've seen those be derailed in other municipalities where they turn into multi-year expensive exercises. I'm wondering if there could be an appetite to at least allow staff to work on some priority signs that are in a highly dilapidated state, save and except for the Yonge Street one, which I would propose maybe a chainsaw might be the most effective thing at this point to improve it. But the $40,000 expenditure, while not insignificant, I think that Mr. Karmazin could probably look at least making some inroads. The logo exercise, I think we will have a report come back from our communications group. I think we could make it very complicated or very simple. I think the natural is some form of EG. I think we could pay a consultant and hire a media firm and a group, and it seems to me that there is a common default to EG, not unlike Los Angeles, how they use LA. And I've also seen some communities as well engage the public in design. And you know, there might be some creative ways for our group. They're a pretty talented group. They've put out some great publications of late that our Director of Communications and her small team and some of our workforce that's pretty innovative and creative could maybe lead up an exercise that engages the community. I look at the township of King, which has separated now. So King has a logo that they use as their traditional township of King, but their new logo that they use for their website and their town offices and their community signs is pretty modern, and I think it was accepted by their community. So we'll take a look at that. So maybe coming out of this, there could be sort of a strategy where we get a little bit of direction to move partially, and but with respect to the big dollar, big expenditure signs, that we come back with a report on an overall potential rebranding initiative.
Thank you, Ms. Webster. Councillor Foster first, and then Councillor Warden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wondered if somebody could speak to, we're sitting here looking at a report with project numbers from 2014 and 2015, and it's 2019. Seems like a lot of time has passed. I just wondered if somebody could speak to how this got held up, or what I see to be held up. And I guess secondly, these signs and the extra planting and maintenance, do you see that as being an issue, a pressure for your staff? I'm just thinking of ahead to the next budget time when we're sitting here looking at increased staffing levels.
General Manager.
Through you, Mr. Chair, with regards to the delay, some of these projects were tied to other projects, namely the 404 opening, as well as the Yonge Street gate entry sign is tied to the regional road widening. So that will be occurring by 2022. That's why the projected timelines in the report suggest a design into 2019, 2020 to prepare the plans to then tender in concert with those projects. I apologize, I didn't catch the second question. Oh, the maintenance standards. Our maintenance standards would be consistent with other entry points, such as facility signs, where we do plant lower maintenance plant material. For example, annuals that we would plant once per season would be a good example of going in, and then those these two extra areas that are proposed, we would then perform our weekly maintenance with our horticultural crews, and that would be absorbed into our existing staff complement and our existing program.
Thank you. Councillor Warden.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, to, I guess this would be the fire chief question. A few years ago, the fire department members went around on some of the major roads and then put signs up telling about certain things that we needed to be aware of as residents. And I'm wondering, I think there is one on the sign that needs to come down with the, as using the other description. But I'm wondering what would happen with your signs now?
General Manager Emerson? Go ahead.
Through the chair. So currently there are, I know that there are some flashing green lights to indicate volunteer firefighters. But as far as advertising and safety messages, we use through corporate comms, exclusively the web, social media, and the marquee signs, both here and at the sports complex. So any messaging that would potentially be lost would be the green light signboards. Again, using social media and other avenues. That's how we advertise that.
Just further to that, I think the flashing green lights, a lot of people either don't know about them, don't realize what they're for, and it would be a shame to not at least be able to advertise them somewhere where people can actually see them rather than on the Facebook and things like that. So if there's maybe some other way of showing those that we can come up with, I think it would be a good idea, because it is important. I mean, I've seen many people just keep on going and not bothering to pull over the side of the road at all for the lights, and it is important. So,
Thank you. There seem to be a lot of good suggestions and comments. Maybe before I go into the getting a motion here for this, I like to say that we've been waiting for these signs for a long, long time, and they finally came through. So we really appreciate the work of the staff, and yes, there is some good comments to make. Maybe for the, I guess I lost Mr. Clerk, if we have to do this in a separate to move it twice, two different ways, to maybe, if everybody agrees with me, to move forward the big signs that then we desperately need to put it in changes, and then we do another one to go back to the staff and come back with another report for the smaller signs and make some changes of what our committee has said and some comments, and we take it from there. Mr. Clerk, can you help me out here?
Through you, Mr. Chair, you currently have a motion presented by Councillor Crone with the recommendations of the report. So it's either changes through formal amendments, or a vote on this, either it being passed or carried and another motion being presented.
Well, I suggested that exactly that we the motion that she made was okay, but would like that we move forward the big signs, that's necessary, and do some changes on, as much as you can. So I'll leave it with Madam Mayor. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I heard something quite different than the coat of arms or crests that we have. And if we're going to do a change, then I would hope that all the signs would be consistent. And I know that this has been a long time, but we do have 3 new people that are on council, and their input is important. And I'm wondering if it could come back. We've had suggestions. I know that we may be forced to make a small change on our coat of arms or crest, in that both the region and YRP have found out that the crown placed on the top of a crest needs royal assent. And so at our meeting, as most recently as Thursday, quite a presentation, if you can pick up the video from the region, that there has to be an approval, and if we are going to go and have approval for the crown on top of the crest, perhaps this is a good time to have a look at something just a little bit different. I'm not saying that we need to change it, but I think I personally would like to have an opportunity to see. We have a lot of young people in our community that are in the arts program at Huron Heights in particular, who are doing graphic arts, and wouldn't it be exciting if we had a bit of a contest to see if in fact they could come up with something a little bit different and reward them accordingly for the sake of a month or two, that would be my hope at this point.
Councillor Carruthers. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
I agree with the mayor, and I'm just balancing that against the comments that some of our signs are more urgent. I'm wondering how many do you think would be urgent, and what's the cost of replacing them? Because if the cost is minimal and there's just a minimal number of signs, I would say we should go ahead with the most needy, knowing that we can replace them so they're all consistent down the road.
General Manager Comerson, please.
Through Mr. Chair, we haven't broken out specifically by way of a condition assessment which signs we would endeavor to replace on a priority basis. We have one project that is before council for the town and community entry feature signs. Those are the signs that are showing the most visible wear. The total order of magnitude for that project is approximately $40,000, so it would be somewhere in between as far as a priority ranking as far as which town or community entry signs to replace.
Thank you. What's the wish of the committee? Do we should give it back to the staff and come back to some suggestions or some different proposal, or did you want us to vote on let the big signs go? Could I have a feel of the committee, please? Give me some ideas. Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. These signs have been under discussion for quite some time, and I want to make sure that we get this right the first time. I think, for the sake of a month or a few weeks, that if we simply receive this and direct staff to bring it back to us with some suggestions on how to proceed. I mean, at this point, the report suggests that the sign on Yonge Street wouldn't be addressed until 2020 anyways. So we have some time. Yes, there are some community signs that are in dire straits, and that really can become a discussion point for the rest of us. If we've waited 8 years or longer, I think we might be able to wait another 6 months at this point, at least from my perspective.
Is that agreeable to all the rest of the committee? All in favor of this? Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, just for clarification, as part of that report coming back, would you be looking for some suggestions on what we might think might be involved in an exercise to update the logo? Is that something you're looking for as well as part of that? Just so that we know what you'd like to have back, that's all.
Go ahead.
From my perspective, absolutely. This was something that I've been asking for quite some time, including when we did the Advantage EG branding exercise. I suggested that we should do it for the whole municipality. I don't think that this needs to be a prolonged, expensive experience. We have some really talented staff on site, and if they need some contracted to support to come up with a stylized version of EG, I think that's the direction I'd like to see us take. We have corporate colors already established. It's really just a question of bringing us into the modern age and taking it from there. Thank you.
General Manager Comerson, so we note this changes and we will bring it back to another date, to some suggestions and some work. In the meantime, I just wanted to ask you, this is all covered by DC charges by chance?
Through Mr. Chair, two of the projects that are noted in the financial implication section indicate that roads development charges will fund those projects.
That's good to hear. So can I have a motion to move this?
Through Mr. Chair, you already had a motion from Councillor Crone.
Okay.
So if Councillor Crone wants to provide an amendment to his initial motion.
Thank you for.
Based on the discussions, it's up to him.
Okay, happy to change the amendment to add in that we direct staff to undergo some research on logo or rebranding efforts.
That's fine.
I will, not wanting to be a Debbie Downer on this, I will, having been through a couple of corporate rebranding exercises, it's not a walk in the park. They can, as I think CO Webster mentioned, it can run away on you. Let's enter into this eyes wide open. Sometimes it can take longer than you expect. It can cost more than you expect, and not everyone's going to like where you land. So,
Thank you.
be prepared.
Go ahead, Councillor
So
Carruthers.
are we removing the second point that council approved the sign concept design and replacing that with the amendment? Is that what we're doing?
General Manager comments? Any comments? And we'll go back to the motion
Through
here.
you, Mr. Chair, I would refer to the clerk as far as
That's what I was going to say. Okay.
revising the resolution.
So I assume we're keeping the last one in, that we are consolidating these various projects into one capital project. So I think that one stays, but I think the one where we're approving the concept designs is what we are striking and replacing with a report from staff. I would like a timeline on that for staff to report back next month. And the comments about corporate rebranding, I think, are valid, and we want to keep this just to logo, not corporate rebranding. We have our colors already, so it's just a logo that we're looking for.
Okay, so then noted. We ready to
Through you, Mr. Chair, so the deputy clerks captured most of the comments that were discussed during this report. So the new addition, I guess, is the middle part that she's highlighted, suggesting that a report back in May with suggestions to proceed, including options for a sign concept design. And then the original part, which would be the third clause that Councillor Carruthers has been referring to, is still included. So again, Councillor Crone was the mover to this motion, and if it's acceptable, then he'd put forward.
All in favor of this motion? Well, I thought we could do it all in one. Can we do it all in one, or we have to do two?
We have a motion on the floor that has been substantially changed from the intent of the original one, so we do need, and we had Councillor Crone move the amendment, so we need to vote on that amendment.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Councillor Crone put the motion forward in terms of the original motion. I was just dealing it with as a friendly amendment, but if council wants a formal amendment, then we need a mover for the formal amendment.
I believe Councillor Crone moved the amendment. I'm fine to move it if that makes it easier, but it's not friendly because it's substantially different. The original motion was to approve this, and we are saying that we're not approving it, so I wouldn't consider it friendly. It's achieving the exact opposite, so that is exactly what a amendment is. Thanks.
Are we doing it all in one, or are we doing it two? Let's get this straight.
It's an amendment because
Yes.
it changes the
Okay.
intent of the original motion. So we're striking something and putting in something different, so that means it's an amendment. I'm fine to move that, so we're going to vote on the amendment, and then we can immediately vote on the entire motion.
Is that okay, Mr. Clerk?
Through you, Mr. Chair, certainly if council wishes to have the formal amendment, I believe I've heard a motion from Councillor Carruthers on the amending motion. It's highlighted in yellow, and that would be voted on first.
Okay, Councillor Roy DeClement.
Thank you. The motion that's highlighted in yellow on the screen refers to options for sign concept design, but doesn't reflect the discussion we had about the town branding exercise. Should that be reflected in a separate motion, or do we want to include it here?
Mr. Clerk?
I'm fine to keep the signs separate from the branding exercise, but I want to make sure that we capture it here some way.
Through you, Mr. Chair, we can certainly add it to the amendment motion.
Mr. Belcheck?
Mr. Chairman, this is just food for thought. Would it make it simpler if we said including options for updating the town logo? Because I think what I heard was the logo is what you're dealing with. It's getting rather vague up there and a bit general, so that might help.
Okay, let's vote on the first one.
I think it's important that we reflect that it's not the actual design of the sign we have a problem with the wood and the armor stone. That's not the issue. It's what's on the sign, not its design.
Thank you. Can we vote on the first one? All in favor of that? Changes? Okay. So that motion is carried. Second one, can we vote on the second one now, please? All in favor? Changes? Thank you. Mr. Cumberson, do you have any comments or any to add or anything else at all? We appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, if there is no comments, I'll pass it back to you, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're under item G. That's why it's taken 7 years. Just if there was any question for those that weren't in the room for 7 years, that's exactly why it's been 7 years. Here we go. Item G, Community Infrastructure and Environmental Services with Councillor Carruthers in the chair.
Thank you. We have nothing at this time. General Manager Molinari, is there anything that you want to add?
Nothing at this time, thank you.
Any questions or comments from the members of the committee? Seeing none, I'll turn it back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We're under item H, Development Services with Councillor Crone in the chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have about 3 items on the agenda today. Number 1 is the Development Services Building Standards Branch report. So, General Manager Ramuno, do you have any comments on this?
Certainly to you, Mr. Chair. So this is an information report for Council with respect to the 2018 summary of expenses and revenues that were taken in through the building permit process. Our CBO, Leo Grillet, is here. If there are any detailed questions, he can certainly answer those for Council. But again, it's an information report. We're required on a yearly basis to provide a summary of the revenue and expenditures for the building branch.
Okay, thank you very much. Could I have a mover for this report? Moved by Councillor Foster. Are there any questions? Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you. I need a little bit of help understanding page 34. We have Building Code Enforcement Reserve, and we've got the opening balance in January of 2018, closing balance 2016. I'm assuming that's just a typo and that needs to be in 18. That's correct? Okay, thank you.
Through the chair. The reason for that is there was a lot happening in 2017 and a lot of bookkeeping and that, and some of the numbers didn't quite come together in time for us to have this report done. We're generally supposed to be in around the March-April time frame, and we were way past June by the time we were able to assemble all of the numbers and that in 2017. So moving forward, we've entered into a discussion, and we will now for certain have the numbers in a timely manner each and every year moving forward. So what we had in the closing balance at December 31st, that should be closing balance at December 31st, 2018 and not 2016.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Councillor Roy DiClemente.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In prior years, this report helped give us an understanding of how many permits remained open, and we had some, I sort of referred to them as aged items, that there were permits that kind of perpetually remained open with projects uncompleted. And I didn't see information on that, and I know that in prior years, we've put some things in place and we're able to close quite a few aged items. I just wonder where things sit with that project.
Staff continue to work towards closing old permits. There is legislation, Limitations Act, and that anything's over 15 years we don't need to bother with. But we are, as they come up, we're trying to close them, and as staff have time, they've been asked to go through their own particular permits that they've been dealing with and try and get the ones that are still open to be closed. And we have closed some. I mean, I went through this in Aurora and I went through it in Vaughan, and we find when you go back and you look at some of the open or closed ones, it's because somebody didn't have a garage slab poured. Well, you know, 10 years has gone past. I'm certain that we would have had calls on that, and we just automatically close some of those without a whole lot of harangue. We don't want to go back and bother the residents over things like that. But when I picked up this report, just to go further, this report was based on something that had been submitted the last 2 years before I came on board. And there were, in those reports, I could find nothing that related to a reporting on the actual outstanding permits, and that could be a different report based on the department's activities more than this. This is a legislative requirement that we have to do this report.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Carruthers?
Thank you. So the top box is showing that we contributed over $1 million to reserves, but the bottom box is showing that only $800,000 was transferred to the reserve. So what happened to the other $200,000?
Through the chair, I honestly can't answer that at this time. Perhaps finance has some input.
Mr. Chairman, I'd have to do some quick math, but in order to reconcile those, you would add both the transfer to reserve as well as the interest earned, which is also transferred to the reserve. And so I think if you add those two numbers together, you should end up with the total that's referred to in the schedule above.
Not quite.
But we can have that double checked. If there's been an error in there, we'll work with the building department and find out which is the correct number.
Yeah, because those two add together are only $1,035,000, $1,036,000. Still got $30,000 outstanding.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to suggest that perhaps the report get referred back to staff, and we'll work with building to have it updated.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions? So, Mr. Clerk, are we just going to table that for now and not vote on it?
Through you, Mr. Chair, that would be, instead of being referred or received, it'd be referred back to staff.
Do we vote on that?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we're going to refer this back to staff. Councillor Foster moved this. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion passed. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the Development Services Branch Report, Review to Register of Cultural Heritage Resources. General Manager Ramuno, do you have any comments on this?
Certainly, to you, Mr. Chair. So this is a report seeking Council's endorsement of the terms of reference and the issuance of an RFP to retain some consulting services to assist staff in reviewing our registry of cultural heritage properties. As you're aware, there's Council has approved a budget for this project in previous years. You know, my suggestion is, of course, we've got over $100,000 in approved capital project for heritage matters, but we're really only allocating a range of $30,000 to $50,000 to complete this component of the work related to the review of the register.
Thank you. Can I have a mover for this? Moved by Councillor Morton. Are there any questions? Madam Mayor?
Thank you very much. Through you to Mr. Maruno. Are there people out there, consultants that do specialize in this area of heritage homes and buildings?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there certainly are, and what we really need sort of a heritage consultant who can assist and provide some direction with respect to going through the list of 460 odd properties, and really to develop a strategy with respect to how we vet through those various properties and bring a number of reports back to our Heritage Advisory Committee and then Council for consideration with respect to whether all these properties really warrant being on the list, and there may be other properties that perhaps may warrant designation. Just based on my research, to date, Council did endorse the register back in 2011. Which identified the 470 properties, but going back to 2006, that register that was endorsed by Council had a number of properties that was just slightly under 200. So between 06 and 2011, we added about 300 properties to the list. So we just need to go through that list and develop a strategy with respect to how we deal with the registrar and whether there are properties that perhaps warrant removal from the list. And again, there may be some that may warrant further discussion with respect to designation, individual designation with the landowner, of course.
I look forward to this coming back.
Councillor Morton, you had a question?
It's not so much a question as just a comment through you, Mr. Chair. I can add a little bit of history to this research that was done, and that we ended up with the 500 and some odd houses. And that had to do with the fact that some of those houses should be designated. There are a number of those houses that are on there for the reason that there might be a dormer that could be historic, or there could be certain windows that could be saved. Much the same as at the last Heritage meeting where they discussed about saving certain things in case people wanted to buy them and use them in another house or that in that way. And that's the reason why we have the 500 houses. And I know that I think it was 2001 that there was a motion that was moved by I think Councillor Roy DeClemente and seconded by myself, that we did support what they were looking for at the time. But when you look back at what really happened with it, then it certainly isn't what we had planned on. So I just wanted to pass that along to some of the newer council members.
Thank you for that background. Do we have any other questions? Councillor Roy DeClemente.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff, I recognize that what we're trying to do is bite away at this bit of a tough nut to crack. Will the consultant's final report, it wasn't clear to me in the terms of reference, would the consultant's final report be making recommendations for properties that, while some may warrant removal or additional action, that there would be some recommendations on which properties should be designated? Because that's part of the challenge, is we know that some of these properties should by all rights be designated and shouldn't just be languishing on a list. And if it were designated, then there are some additional protections provided by the legislation to put some responsibilities onto the owners. Will that be coming out of that consultant's report?
Through you, Mr. Chair, certainly that's the intent for the consultant to provide us with recommendations with respect to the significance of those properties. And then, staff will have to follow the process with respect to consulting with the Heritage Committee and then on the council. But that's the intent.
Are there any other questions for staff? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? None opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, last item on for us is the Development Services Planning Branch Memo Civic Precinct Plan Study Update. Over to you, Mr. Ramuno, for comments.
Certainly, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this item is really a information memo for this new council with respect to providing some background related to the Civic Precinct Plan study work that commenced back in 2017. So there was an extensive public consultation process that was followed with our consultant and staff. There was a 4-phase program. Last year, back in 2018, there was direction from council to identify a preferred option and to come back with a sort of a final concept plan and design guidelines. I thought it was appropriate at this point in time with new council, and I'm new to this project as well, is to just provide this update to council, and I think this warrants a workshop, and hopefully we'll be able to schedule this item for a council workshop in the May cycle, just to go through the concept plan and some of the guideline provisions with respect to the vision for the precinct. As council's aware, it's really to outline a vision for the civic precinct lands that comprise not only town-owned property but the Sharon Temple lands to the south, and just a long-term vision and facility fit for that area. So I think this warrants a bit more of a detailed discussion with respect to the work that's been done to date, and some of the options that have been identified within the report for the facilities that were identified as possible programming for the space.
Okay, thank you, General Manager. Can I have a mover for this? Joe, Councillor Persechini. All right, are there any questions for staff? Councillor Roy DiClemente.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The report, the memorandum references an Appendix 2 that was submitted under separate cover, and I don't see it. I thought it might be here at our desk when we arrived today, but I don't see it here. Is it a larger vision of the precinct plan, so that because the document that we have was quite small and might be challenging for, I'm not sure what it was, so I wasn't sure how I could vote.
Mr. Ramuno?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Chair. No, essentially, I thought that was perhaps provided by way of email. It's essentially this document. It's the document that was put together by our consultants with respect to, it's essentially the draft concept plan and the set of design guidelines that form part of the plan. So it's about 60, 70 odd pages. But if that wasn't received by council, we'll ensure that electronic copies or hard copies are provided for council by tomorrow.
Thank you. I think that would be acceptable. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, I will call for a vote. All those in favor? None opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. Are there any other questions from committee to staff? None. Mr. Ramuno, do you have any closing comments?
Nothing further at this time.
Okay. Thank you, Thank you very much. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. We are at item I, and that's Legal and Counsel Support Services with Councillor Foster in the chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have two reports coming forward today. The first one is LCSS Report 2019-03. That is a guideline for event of municipal significance designation. General Manager Horner, any comments?
This report is out of the norm, so I'm happy to give some background, and then I'll turn it over to the clerk if there are any specific questions. But the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario issues permits for the sale of alcohol at special events, and there are a variety of categories of events for which they issue these permits. But one is specific to municipalities. And so the AGCO will issue a permit for the sale of alcohol to an event that is designated as being municipally significant. But the issue is that the Alcohol and Gaming Commission doesn't actually define the term. What they do is they actually leave it to each municipality to make the determination on their own, on a case-by-case basis. So really the purpose of this report is to propose a definition of municipally significant event that will assist both council and staff in processing requests for the designations. And then the other thing too is we're also proposing that a fee be charged for that particular service of $100.
Thank you. Anything further, Mr. Clerk?
Nothing further, Mr. Chair.
Can I have a mover for this report? Councillor Morton. And we will move to questions from committee. Councillor Morton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to, I'm not sure whether it's the clerk or, okay, so it's the clerk. I do understand the reason, obviously, for the significant municipal event, and I certainly know what all that is involved with that. But what I'm a little confused in is the line that says that you're going to be charging the administration fee of $100 for reviewing the special occasion permit, the applications. I don't see the advantage for the town to be doing that, because the person that makes the decision on whether this SOP is the LCB or is the LCBO, and they're the ones that either approve it or turn it down, and their fees are $450.
Mr. Clerk.
Through Mr. Chair, it's simply a cost recovery. It doesn't even really cover staff time in terms of for $100, but we are bringing the request to council. Council considers it, and then we have to correspond back with the requester. So it's just a matter of ensuring that all the guidelines are met for the municipally significant event, and then placing it on a council agenda for approval.
Just further to that, what is it exactly that council would be approving? Is it just the fact that they're approving it is a significant event, or they're spending extra time reviewing the application that's going forward to for the permit?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, the staff will be conducting the review of the application and ensuring that if the guidelines that we're proposing are passed and adopted by council, that the applicant is meeting those guidelines, such as having, you know, a co-insured certificate. And then we will be presenting that to council once they've met those guidelines. So council would be then just giving it sort of the rubber stamp and declaring it a municipally significant event.
Okay, I just didn't want to see staff having to spend a lot of time when they sent the information down to the LCBO to have, or the ADCO, to have them go through it all again and perhaps send something back and say it's wrong, and the individuals applying for the license were confused.
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, unfortunately, staff are already spending a significant amount of time on these requests, regardless of this proposal. We're just trying to attempt to recover some of the staff costs.
It's technically that we are approving then the fee and the work that the staff are going to be doing.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and more importantly, the guideline.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Carruthers, and then Roy DeClemente.
Thank you. I have a bit of an issue with the charging the $100 to a not-for-profit or a charity for a municipally significant event. So I understand there's a staff cost. There is a staff cost to everything that we do, and we don't charge it back in every case. So if we're talking about something that is municipally significant, and it's a charity, or it's a not-for-profit, I think it's wrong to be charging them. I think that there should be an exemption in there for charities and not-for-profits. I don't know why, if the event is actually municipally significant, why we would charge them to deem it as such. Because if it's municipally significant, that means that we care about it and it's something that we want to happen. So if we get inundated with these type of requests from people trying to get it to be a municipally significant event and it's not deemed that way, then maybe we need to find different language. But I would think if it's a charity or not-for-profit and it is actually deemed a municipally significant event, either they get their $100 rebated or it's not charged in the first place.
Mr. Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Chair, certainly I can appreciate the fact of charging a charity or a not-for-profit organization. The fact that this is before you, if you recall, there was a request from a business that wanted a certain event designated as municipally significant. It was that when I sort of questioned, why are we doing it in this manner? And it's certainly a changed practice from AGCO, that this is a new requirement. And when you take a look at that specific event, the organization, the business, in essence was just promoting their business, serving alcohol, come in, see our product, hopefully buy it, and from the sale of the wine, we're going to contribute to a charity. So does that meet the definition of a municipally significant event? That's why we put together a guideline to sort of define it, because it isn't defined under AGCO. So the fee is certainly up to council to waive. Even if you do establish a $100 fee, the applicants can always request that council waive that fee.
Thank you. Councillor Roy D. Clemente.
Thank you. Two thoughts, or one question and an inquiry about the report. On page 4 of 5 of the report, at the top of it, it references that the AGCO has the final decision. So in other words, even with a designation from the town, the registrar may still require, and it doesn't really say what the registrar may require to issue a public event SOP. So I'm not sure, there's some information missing from that. And the other comment I had, or the question I had, was even with the designation, and I want to make sure that it's separate, but we have inspections, fire and life safety inspections that take place, and if there's food trucks and so on that take place. This is separate, unique, and distinct from that process. So all of our regular processes would still apply regardless of whether there's a designation of municipal significance. I want to make sure that that's clear as well, please.
Mr. Clerk.
Through you, Mr. Chair, certainly that is absolutely correct. In terms of the point that you pointed out in the report, is just a typo actually. So we'll have to we'll need, yeah, they're talking about what the requirement is that they may need additional requirements. They're just documents that the applicant may have. Just to go back, Mr. Chair, if I may, to put a little more clarity in terms of Councillor Carruthers charging a fee to a charity or nonprofit event. Under the definition of AGCO, a charity or a nonprofit organization does not require the municipally significant event. They can go to AGCO and just apply for their event. This purpose here is for the private individuals or the private businesses that are looking for that municipally significant designation.
If I may respond to that. So there is no way that we would be charging a charity for this?
Through you, Mr. Chair, so those organizations that are charitable or nonprofit would even come to us.
Okay.
They would be applying straight to AGCO.
Thank you.
Okay. A good example would be the Sharon Temple. It's a registered charitable organization. They can go directly to AGCO and apply for that event.
Madam Mayor?
Thank you. With that explanation, I think we should be charging. Our staff are working on this file, and we have expenses that have occurred with staff time. These are commercial, and that's the cost of doing business. $100 won't determine whether they're actually going to have it or not, but I do think that there's a recognition that there was staff time put into the decision that's made.
Thank you, Councillor Persechini.
Well, you stole my thunder, because we're in business to at least pay for ourselves, not to, we're not a charity foundation here, so I think it's important that we don't lose that aspect. I mean, as you said, you explained it quite well now. I think everybody understands it, but we got to really be careful, because everybody could be on our doorstep as well. They're not going to charge you, so we can't start that. And I think we also talked about before that there is, with General Manager Comerson, there's a protocol or something in place that who gets for free, who doesn't get it for free. If I recall, is that right, General Manager Comerson? We way back to about different charges of organizations come through. I might get confused here. Mr. Clerk, maybe you can answer that. I thought we had something going.
Through Mr. Chair, I believe Councillor Persechini is referring to rental of town-owned facilities.
Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to the clerk. I'm not sure if I missed it in the report, but about how many of these applications would we get a year?
Currently, not that many. Through you, Mr. Chair, currently not that many. And again, with the event, the designation of municipal significance comes back before council. So other municipalities that we've studied on this sort of guideline and SOP designation, they actually, councils delegated that authority to the clerk, but we felt that it wasn't necessary at this time because the number of applications just aren't there right now. But we are anticipating that because it's a new requirement and AGCO is sort of hammering down on this requirement, that you'll see more and more of these coming forward.
So the $100 permit fee, we may have chewed through that in our time right here now discussing it. It's not that, seems insignificant for a designation of a significant event. That's all.
Thank you. Seeing no more questions and we're taking into consideration all the concerns, I think we can move ahead to a vote. All in favor? And that is carried. Next item on the agenda is Legal and Counsel Support Services Report 2019-06. And that is the Council Chamber Community Engagement Improvement Project. Can I have a mover for this? Mr. Persechini? Mr. Horner, any comments?
Many hands in this report. IT has been involved, Parks and Rec has been involved on the facilities side, and as well the deputy clerk has taken a bit of a lead here too. So really what the proposal is for modest expense to enhance the live streaming experience for the resident community. So any questions, I'm sure the deputy clerk would be happy to respond with some assistance from General Manager Valchik and Karmazin.
Thank you. Any questions from committee? Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you. This is a great report, and it's great to see that people are accessing the live streaming and moving the cameras. I think is a great idea, and as well as giving desks to more of our staff. I do have an issue with the backs of people's heads when you're trying to have a conversation with the general manager and they're trying to turn around and you can't see them to have a good conversation. So yes, you. I'm joking. I'm wondering if we can look at a way to rejig the desks here so that we can see all your bright smiley faces when we ask questions. Or is that part B of this?
maybe that's part B, something that we could do as a further report.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I believe that there is a plan in place for revamping the council chamber at some point of time, and that's in discussion with the manager of facilities. However, I believe Mr. Karmazin could provide more information if you require any.
Mr. Webster?
Thank you. I think this style goes back to 1821, as a matter of fact, and kind of a bear pit style that we have here. And so I guess part of it is we've looked at some other municipal models, and one of the ones is having the arch of staff looking at council. And then I guess the one negative of that is when you do have a lot of spectators here, they're looking at the back of staff's heads as well. So there's some pros and cons to it. As far as discussion purposes, we could take a look at a revamp of this, but it would probably be something we should budget, I would imagine, for 2020 now, sorry, I was going to say. And because I think it could be, there'd be accessibility concerns and stuff like that. This latest one, even the 15,000, would eliminate the desk to our underneath the screen and replace it with a director's table, which I think would be appropriate so that staff don't necessarily have to sit randomly in the crowd. And then we'd have a production table at the back. So we do lose a little bit of seating with this, but I think it's worth the investment. And we will ask Mr. Karmazin and his facilities group to take a look at a potential budget inclusion for next year for council's discussion for the 2020 budget timeframe, if that meets with the council's approval.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? Councillor Crone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to staff. I support this initiative. I think it's important that we provide as much access to the public for seeing what goes on here. I am, and I think the cost is fine. The one thing that I am concerned about is if I look at our channel, we have about 49 subscribers to our YouTube channel, which we broadcast on. And I think once you eliminate those on town payroll, it's probably a lot less. So I would encourage our staff, communications, let's see what we can do to increase that number so people can actually see what's going on here. That's all. Thank you.
Yep, through you, Mr. Chair, that's noted. We will make sure to carry out a proper communication plan for expanding our live streaming solution.
Thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none. That was quick. We can move ahead to a vote. All those in favor? And that is carried. Anything further, Mr. Horner?
Nothing further.
I'll now pass this back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We're at item J, administration with myself in the chair, and there are no reports at this time. Mr. Webster, is there any updates that need to be brought forward?
The only update, Madam Mayor, is I believe Mr. Molinari has confirmed the attendance of the Upper York sewage system folks from York Region, Mike Rabeau and his team. And I believe that is for our next Committee of the Whole meeting, and we look forward to, we've requested sort of a, instead of just trying to hit where we're going, a little bit of a backgrounder, because there certainly is a lot of background history to this project, and so we've asked him to sort of walk through the various iterations and the chronology of how we've gotten to where we are now.
Thank you. With that, we are at item K, and that's Emergency and Community Safety Services with Councillor Roy DeClemente in the chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There are no prepared items on our agenda today. Chief, do you have anything to bring forward at this time?
With thanks, nothing further.
What a shock. Members of committee, anything you'd like to bring forward at this time? Seeing none, I'll turn the chair back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We're at item L, and that's Corporate Services with Councillor Morton in the chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have nothing on the agenda for this, for corporate services either. Mr. Valchich, do you have anything that you'd like to bring up?
Nothing further, thank you, Madam Chair.
Any questions from members of council? Hearing none, I'll turn the chair back to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. We're down to other business, and we have one report regarding the East Gwillimbury Mayor and Council Charity Golf Tournament, and some background information on who sits on the committee to make the decisions from the EG Golf Committee, and the kind of decisions that they have made in spending the dollars in the last year. Are there any questions on this? Councillor Persechini.
No question, just a comment. I still say, I've been around a lot of golf tournament. This is the elite of the golf tournament. Lots of good food, lots of fun. We just have to hope for the weather. And the whole committee and yourself do a great job. So I'm really proud to be playing every year, so in the past 4 years, so I hope to continue on. But again, it's like a machine. Everything runs so smooth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The credit certainly goes to our committee that we have. They meet on a monthly basis. They plan the golf tournament probably 2 weeks after the year before is completed, and take a look at what worked and what didn't work and the changes that need to be made, and then work throughout the year on it, as well as have a they are the ones that approve applications. No members of elected officials do. It's an independent body, and I'm very grateful, and I know that other members of council are as well, and would certainly like to thank those members that give of their time to make a difference in our community. We raise somewhere between $60,000 and $70,000 for our golf tournament. You can see this year $64,700 was distributed in our community to a variety of organizations and individuals. And when we go back the next year, we'll have someone who received a grant speak at the next year's golf tournament, and I believe that members of the public who are there golfing have a far better understanding of the impact that they actually make to people who are in need in our community. And while we like to think that there are not, everybody is just fine, we have people that aren't, and it is seamless in making sure that our youth are being assisted in a variety of activities. We have an elite funding for those members who are competing at a national or international level. We have community grants and community initiatives that are given to community organizations to hold events, so people can come free and enjoy a variety of activities right in our own backyard. So kudos to everyone, and a special thanks to Gina Casey, our EA, who is the administrative support for this committee. So, Councillor Morton.
I was just going to say that too, Madam Mayor, because I know that the work that Gina gets in, puts into this goes above and beyond, as well as doing the rest of her duties for council, and not to take away from the committee itself, but I know that Gina doing this is second to none, so congratulations to her too.
Thank you. I might suggest to members of committee that they pull out their calendars, and it is always the second Tuesday of September. And we have a shotgun start at noon, and you can work it, you can golf it, you can come and eat, whatever works for you. But I would urge everyone to come out and celebrate and thank those that golf to make a difference in our community as well.
September 10th.
September 10th, there we go. So with that, could I have a motion to receive Councillor Crone? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Item number 2 is regarding our council workshop topics for May the 14th, and it seems to me we had a couple of suggestions earlier in reports. Mr. Clerk, do you have those noted in our minutes?
Through, Madam Mayor, I believe through senior management, the topics suggested for May 14th would include the Heritage List, Civic Precinct, and Sharon Temple presentation tour with perhaps a lunch to wrap up.
Very nice. Mr. Webster?
I think the heritage list might be a little ambitious. We're just right now looking at retention, and it's identified. So I think at this point in time, the Civic Precinct would certainly render some good discussion. I also think it's slightly tied a little bit to the help. And I don't know, Mr. Karmazin, that group is just starting up, but that's a significant facility going through early design stages, and maybe we could incorporate a little bit of that as well, as far as a site for potential amenities of a overall community nature, as well as with our other facilities. And the temple, I believe what they want to do is do a bit of a presentation here, a little bit of and then have I think a bit of a lunch and a walking tour of their site. So I think it's kind of going to be iterative. So maybe those topics, and then maybe for the June timeframe, we might be in better shape for the heritage program, and plus a few others that I think we've put on our own follow-up list as well.
Councillor Roy D. Clemente.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would also like to suggest, I know there was some discussion when there were some things put onto calendars as temporary, but emergency management and how we manage. There was some reference today from the presentation we had on flood control, but I know that there may be an opportunity to learn more about emergency management in our EOC and the exercise that staff are undertaking in May. May provide for some good material for us to discuss it in June. So I'd just like to put that out there as well.
And it seems May, June, we have those rains that just don't seem to stop some days, so it might be very timely. I might also ask Mr. Karmazin with a health and active living plaza update, now that we're starting to move into a little more active time for this, if we could perhaps schedule it a couple times a year, and maybe it's 3. I know that there will be decisions that are to be made by the committee throughout the next couple of years, but I think if we can put an earmark hold on a couple of our dates for workshops. You can always let them go if you don't need them, but I think it's going to be really important for all of council to be completely informed on a regular basis of where we're going and how we're doing. Anything else? Okay. With that then, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you. Given the number of complaints that Councillor Foster and I have received about the odor from the sewage lagoons, and given that the sewage lagoons are the decommissioning of them is up to the province at this point. I think it would be prudent for us to write a short letter to MPP Mulroney identifying the complaints that we have routinely received from residents on an ongoing basis for many years about the odor coming from the lagoons and how it affects their quality of life. We state in our purpose that we're all about quality of life and the environment, and I think that we need to speak up on this issue. I know we'll be getting a presentation that will give us more detail, and all I think that we need at this point is just to identify in a timely manner to our MPP that this is something that is disrupting the quality of life of our residents, and that at this time of year we do get numerous complaints. If we choose to write a follow-up letter after we get more information from the region, we can do so at that time, but I think it's timely to write a letter now, just simply referring to the the type of complaints that we get and the severe odor that comes and means people in Hall Landing can't get outside for a week every spring.
Any comments, questions, Mr. Webster?
Madam Mayor, I think this speaks to the overall need for the Upper York approval. And the, you know, a lot of folks think it's just for development. And, well, that is a significant matter. We have an existing community. I think we're one of the largest in Ontario that is still on sewage lagoons. I know Erin, Ontario, I've met some folks from there as well as also on these open sewage lagoons, which is very outdated technology. I think I might have mentioned our prior council terms. Our council has gone on record with a formal resolution requesting not only to the province and the party in ruling power, but also York Region to prioritize the decommissioning. So I think that would be worthwhile as well. As far as a letter, I think that Mr. Molinari's group might be able to work with our customer service group and try to chronicleize some of the amount of complaints we've had. I guess you could say maybe one's too many, but I know that this time of year we seem to get a few in. We could also check with the region to see if they've been getting complaints as well. As the operator and owner of the plant that's currently there, we may also want to take a look at, and I add Mr. Molinari, I know he carries a file around of prior communiques we've sent to share with council so that they can see what kind of resolutions and letters and requests we've formally sent, but we could certainly prepare a draft letter, and maybe if council wants, we could try to bring it back in a timely manner for some discussion here, maybe in a memo format or whatnot. So if that would meet with council's overall intent, that's what we could follow up on.
I think that would be an opportunity for, again, new people to understand how thick the file is. And if we are able to bring it back to our next meeting, we have the Upper York people here at the same time. It would coincide with perhaps some motions that we might want to make with them as well. If that seems to work with people, go ahead.
Thank you. That would work well. I just don't want it to get too delayed because the people have been complaining now, and I want to get that information to our new MPP. And I appreciate all the resolutions and that's been done by previous councils. As you said, it's a new council. It's also a new government. So bringing them up to speed on what's happening here. As you say, it's unacceptable in this day and age. And I know the Upper York will resolve it, but that's still years away. And to think that we're going to continue to put our community through that for years to come. I've heard that there is capacity that we could, if we can get a waiver on the certificate, we can still, we could decommission them. And I think those are the types of questions we need answers to, and questions that we should be asking our MPP about what can happen with that certificate. I don't think we should just take it at face value, knowing that it's in legislation that it can be changed, and with a new government we can put different pressures on, and I don't think we should just accept the answers that we've had in the past, but look for new solutions. So thank you for that, and I appreciate your indulgence in this. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Clerk.
Through you, Madam Mayor, my apologies. I neglected to jump in on the discussions with regards to our proposed project on council chambers, community engagement improvement. Staff, when we were discussing and planning for this report, there's some contractual timelines that we're trying to make. More importantly, we're trying to time this between the last meeting in June and your July meeting so that there's no interruptions, obviously, with council meetings. So if it would be favorable for committee, if we could have a ratification of the proposed motion at this evening's council meeting, it would help with contractual obligations.
I'm seeing nods. So if you could prepare that for tonight, then we will deal with it, and moved by Councillor Roy DiClemente. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Is there any other business at this time? I don't believe so, but do we need a motion for Councillor Carruthers' request?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I mean, certainly motions are adopted into the minutes. There was, I believe, an understanding and direction to council, senior management, so I leave it up to council's hands.
I think everybody understands where we're going. I think we're fine. Okay? Okay, with that, could I have a motion to adjourn at 3:16, moved by Councillor Roy DiClemente. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. We are back here at